Zoro vs Sanji is the closest it's ever been since the beginning of One Piece. I will be talking about manga spoilers in this video. If you're not caught up, please back out the video. Let's get right into it. So I've been seeing a lot of people in the One Piece community actually bringing up Zoro vs Sanji. Now pre-Wano, my answer was always Zoro. But once we got into Wano and post-Wano territory, the answer started to get a little bit cloudy. Both Zoro and Sanji have elevated their games to such an elite level now that there are people that are putting them in the conversations with the admirals. But before we get into all of that, let's make sure we dissect each of their abilities. In Wano, Zoro actually acquired Oden's very own Enma. Now we know the Enma is a legendary blade that Oden used to scar Kaido, but Zoro actually used this same sword to actually scar Kaido. Enma is a legendary sword because it actually takes the user's Ryuo, which is that advanced armament haki that actually goes outside of your body and it harnesses it for you. But we know this very same Enma has a mind of its own, which is why it gave Zoro a lot of trouble, because Zoro did not have the haki capacity to withstand the amount of power that Enma wanted to withdraw from Zoro. But that was mainly in Wano. Once we started to step into Egghead, it didn't look like Enma was really a big problem for Zoro, but then again, there weren't opponents that were on the level of a Kaido or maybe even a King that Zoro had to deal with. But there are instances where Zoro was actually able to power up Enma by actually pouring more of his haki into Enma, and we've seen one of his one sword style attacks almost cost Kaido some big damage on the roof, and Big Mom had to warn Kaido to move out the way. But as we've seen in the battle with King, Enma was literally drawing so much haki from Zoro that it almost killed him. This is one of the biggest hurdles that Zoro has to overcome, which is going to put him from the great swordsman to the very, very best. Now, one of the other greatest things that we were able to learn about Zoro in Wano is that he unlocked his Conqueror's haki. We know that when Zoro used his 9 sword style Asura attack against a Kaido, he was able to leave a scar against Kaido. But then again, that was Zoro pouring all of his haki into one attack, and Kaido wasn't even able to drop to his knees. But we do know during that exchange, Kaido acknowledged that Zoro has Conqueror's haki. Now this has obviously caused a lot of debate within the community. We don't know if that means that Zoro actually has advanced Conqueror's coding, or if that just means that he was able to use his Conqueror's haki in conjunction with the armament or something. We don't know the true meaning of this scene, but it does give him some cool points in the argument against Sanji, because Sanji, as far as we know, does not have access to Conqueror's haki. But if we give Zoro the benefit of the doubt and we say that he has Conqueror's coding, which is the same advanced Conqueror's haki that Luffy was able to predict as he was fighting a Kaido, that puts Zoro in a completely different class. Conqueror's coding is essentially the same as armament haki, but you are using Conqueror's haki instead. So this means the defense, the offense, the power, everything is heightened. And it was stated by Kaido that only the most powerful individuals can access this technique. Now, if we jump towards his fight with King, we can see that Zoro was able to use sword slashes to help propel himself in the air so he did not fall to his death, because we all know that King has the ability to fly around, which means Zoro had to use techniques that were literally using Ryuo to try to knock him down in flight. The reason why I bring this up is because that's something that he would definitely need to do against a Sanji that is able to use Rokushiki techniques and literally kick in the air. Zoro also has incredible endurance because he was able to tank an attack from both Big Mom and Kaido. That means Sanji's gonna have to be amazing offensively to even damage Zoro. But if we move into Egghead territory for Zoro, this is where things get a little bit tricky. We know that Vegapunk has been working on creating the ultimate life forms in the Seraphim. One of them being S-Hawk, who is modeled and cloned after a Dracula Mihawk, who happens to be Zoro's quote-unquote end battle. S-Hawk was gifted Dazbone's Devil Fruit, as well as being gifted with Lunarian abilities, which actually brings us back to King vs Zoro. As we know, Lunarians have the flames on their back, which tell us whether their defenses are up or down and whether their speed is increased or decreased. With Lunarian abilities, if the flames on your back are up, that means your defenses are at an all-time high, but your speed is decreased. Zoro had no choice but to read this in his fight against King, because when King's defenses were up, he was unable to damage him, even though he was throwing out crazy attacks with Enma. That means Zoro was using Ryuo to try to damage King and nothing was working. This is how powerful the Lunarians are. Vegapunk just happened to give this same ability to S-Hawk and the rest of the Seraphim, and we got to see Zoro and S-Hawk clash for a little bit, and it did look like S-Hawk was able to keep up with Zoro to a certain extent. What that tells me is that the Seraphim's defense is no joke because they have access to Lunarian abilities. You may be asking, why is this important? Well, it matters when we're talking about Sanji. Sanji's role in Wano was important because he went up against Queen the Plague, which happens to be one of Kaido's other all-stars next to a king. In his battle against Queen, Queen has stated that he has better tech than Vegapunk, and Sanji was able to keep up with him. Now, as far as I know, this is cap, but you know what? We will take Queen's word for it just for now. We are trying to get Prime Sanji and Prime Zoro to find out who really wins in the end. One thing that we should point out about Sanji is that Sanji actually had an interaction with the very same king that Zoro defeated, and Sanji was able to evade him, but he did use the raid suit. This is something that Zoro was not able to do. He doesn't have the travel speed to evade a king, but he does have the reaction speed to actually counter King's Lunarian abilities. Now, let's not get it twisted. Sanji has great defenses as well, because we do know that Queen actually accessed his serpent form, and when he was in that serpent form, he stated that he was able to take down some of the best armament haki masters, and Sanji was able to tank that attack as well. At this point, Sanji actually unlocked his Germa awakening. One thing we know about the science group Mads is that a lot of them were in competition with each other, and that does mean Judge is in that conversation as well. And if we're looking at a Vegapunk who actually tried to create the ultimate life forms in a Seraphim, we could look at Germa 66 and say that Judge was using his children to be the quote-unquote Seraphim. So this means that Sanji was able to unlock some of the greatest abilities that we've ever seen. Sanji's defenses became so powerful that he was able to literally shatter Queen's sword with his neck alone without even using armament haki. As Queen stated, Judge literally created beings with accelerated healing, increased defenses, and some crazy physical strength. This all happened to Sanji in a moment. But this doesn't eliminate what Sanji had prior to the Germa awakening. So you take Sanji's great abilities already, and then you add on the Germa awakening, and now you are looking at somebody that is so fast that Queen was not able to perceive him. Queen stated that Sanji was moving so fast that he was moving faster than the eye could see, and this is the same Queen that went up against a Marco. So this means that Sanji, in theory, is faster than Marco, and actually Sanji is the fastest Straw Hat and actually one of the fastest characters in the One Piece world. Being faster than Marco is already an insane feat because Marco was able to keep up with King and Queen at the same time, and he was putting in work in Wano. You saw him even knock down Big Mom ship and all of these things. Marco was very, very active in Wano. If Marco didn't have to worry about healing everybody else, he actually could have fought King and or Queen. Not only did the Germa awakening increase his speed and defenses, but it actually increased his offensive capabilities as well. I am talking about Sanji's Ifrit Jambe. Sanji stated that if he pairs the exoskeleton from the Germa awakening with his armament haki, he will have the ability to use hotter flames. These flames were so powerful that they were able to take down Queen, something that Marco hasn't shown us with his own flames. So clearly the armament haki for Sanji is there, but Sanji also has observation. If we remember earlier in Wano, Luffy and Jinbei were running around and Sanji was with them, but he took off because he was able to sense a powerful enemy within the vicinity. Luffy stated that he couldn't even pull something like this off. This means that Sanji has an observation haki that is in some cases superior to Luffy. Now, if we look at observation haki as a whole, one could state that there's a difference between a sensory type observation haki or a future sight type observation haki. We've heard that the future sight one was the more advanced version of observation haki, but there are aspects of observation haki that Sanji has that Luffy cannot access. But what's interesting is that the first character that actually introduced us to future sight observation haki was not able to land an attack on Sanji. I'm speaking about Katakuri during the wedding, who tried to shoot an attack at Sanji, but he also predicted that Sanji was going to dodge, and Sanji dodged it. That's an incredible feat. Does this mean that Sanji has future sight? I don't think I'll go that far, but this does mean that his reaction speed and his observation haki in the area is just insane. Sanji has better observation than Zoro, hands down. But let's stop playing around. Let's address what's really been going on with the Sanji fandom. In recent chapters, we've seen that Zoro and S-Hawk were going back and forth, struggling each way, but when you're looking at a Sanji going up against S-Shark, it was looking completely one-sided. S-Shark landed a direct blow on Sanji, and Sanji didn't even feel it, flinch, or move, meaning that the Germa Awakened exoskeleton is at an all-time high. If Sanji Sanji's able to tank direct attacks from Seraphims and not even feel anything without even tapping into his armament haki is looking scary. I believe Zoro and Sanji have increased their abilities so much that you can make a case that they are Admiral level. Now, I don't like using the Admiral Aramaki feat, which I've seen a lot of people using. We know that Zoro took down King and Sanji took down Queen, and then Aramaki came through to Wano and tried to finish them off a little bit, but they were already half dead, half beaten. I don't like that feat. I'm not using it. Use it if you want to. The reason why I'll put them in that conversation is that we are seeing some of the greatest displays of haki ever within the Wano arc. I still believe Zoro has greater endurance, but Sanji, the way he's looking right now, the exoskeleton is looking very similar to how the Lunarians move. There was even a statement from Queen that suggested that Sanji looked like he was Lunarian. We know Sanji's able to use flames and his defenses are very high, and his speed is also very high. It's looking like Lunarian abilities. Now, we can't say for sure, but one thing we can say is that Judge definitely knows about the Lunarians as much as Queen knows about the Lunarians. If Sanji's exoskeleton is anything similar to that of King's, Zoro may have some issues, but I still give the endurance to Zoro. The fact that Zoro has access to Conquerors though makes it very tough offensively for Sanji. Personally, I believe it's super close when it comes to Zoro versus Sanji, because the way Sanji is moving right now, he's literally looking like a King 2.0. Sanji is way faster and has way better observation haki, but Zoro has tapped into Ryuo and he also has access to Conquerors. With all this information presented in front of us, I believe that there's some damning evidence against one of the two. During Zoro's fight with King, we saw Sanji actually call Zoro on the transponder snail and tell him that if his abilities get out of whack, if he's not able to control his German awakening, that Zoro should be the one to take him out. Now, I don't know what that says to you guys, but to me, that does not sound like somebody that believes they can defeat the person that they are asking to take them out if things get bad. But there's also the case that Zoro actually fought a King, and I believe that King and Sanji's fighting styles in some aspects are similar. Personally, for me, I would say Zoro is a slight smidge above Sanji right now. One thing I saw from Zoro's battle with King is that it looked like King was relying too heavily on his Lunarian abilities, but in Sanji's case, Sanji would be using a lot of observation haki. This is something that Zoro would definitely have an issue with, but I do think that Zoro's offensive capabilities are just that much greater and his endurance is insane. Do I believe Ryuo will be enough to take down Sanji? No, because Ryuo wasn't enough to really take down King either. And Sanji could definitely outspeed Zoro's techniques for sure. But this does not negate the fact that Zoro was able to scar a Kaido and that he has access to Conquerors. But on the off chance that Enma actually ends up taking too much haki from Zoro, it's gonna be over with. Zoro won't have as many opportunities to land attacks on Sanji like he did against King. And that's because I believe that Sanji is faster than a King. But you guys let me know down in the comment section below, man. Are you taking Zoro or are you taking Sanji? Listen, I get it. It's very close, and Team Sanji is the loudest it's been in years. I just need to see the Ifrit Janbei being used against a more powerful opponent, or maybe Sanji tapping into Conqueror's haki, or maybe even if Sanji gets Future Sight. If any of those things happen, it's looking scary for Zoro out here. I'm gonna tell you that right now. With that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.